Dear Mock COP26 delegates and fellow young activists, we're in the middle of a climate and biodiversity crisis, and probably this is the greatest challenge we humans have ever faced in our time on this planet. The task ahead is huge, and we will only succeed in avoiding disaster if all sectors of society work together towards carbon-neutral societies that live in harmony with nature. Education plays a key role in this task, not only because it shapes the values, the knowledge, and the skills of the upcoming generation, but also because, as the current pandemic has taught us, education institutions play a key social role in our communities, a role that goes well beyond teaching and learning. Among many other things, schools provide everyday food for millions of children across the world. Education institutions build bridges across families and local communities. They inform parents on aspects that they did not have previous knowledge on, and they produce the scientific research that defines what we know as human beings. The transition towards a truly sustainable education system is not only about including more environmental topics in the curricula, but it's also about including climate and biodiversity in all aspects of education and in all sectors of our education institutions. If we do not do so, we will only be doing half of the task, and half-hearted solutions are not sufficient in the middle of this crisis. Our approach towards sustainable education system needs to focus on three key elements. The first one is about education and research. We must include climate and biodiversity in education curricula across all relevant subjects and at all levels, from primary to higher education. Schools and universities should teach about the science behind climate change and mass extinction of species. As well, they should teach about the social, economical, and ethical aspect behind those phenomena, how it affects people differently and the reasons behind it, and how we can promote solutions that also promote social justice. We need an approach to environmental education that is science-based, multidisciplinary, and intersectional. And it is extremely important that including these topics in curriculum, it is done through meaningful involvement of teachers and students in the decision-making processes. This is not only the most democratic way of doing so, but it's also the most effective one, as both teachers and students are everyday experts of the education system. When it comes to research, we need to direct the strategic efforts of academic institutions, as well as public and private investment, towards green research that supports the transition towards sustainable societies. But we should also, while always bearing the principles of academic freedom at the center, open up a discussion on the ethical issues of conducting certain types of research, which outcomes we know are going to be harmful for the present and future generations. We know more and better than before, and we should update our research policies accordingly. Research should always be in line with the principle of causing no harm. This is not an easy discussion to have, but it is a very important one. The second key element is that we need to make our education institutions sustainable. We need to ensure that schools and universities are managed in a way that is not harming for our planet. From energy consumption to the food that is served in school canteens, institutions should follow both principles of carbon neutrality and no harm towards nature. And that means changing the way we have been doing things up to now. This also includes university investment portfolios. Our institutions should not be investing in companies and projects that are directly harming our planet. This includes, for example, investments in fossil fuel companies. Education institutions should immediately divest from such portfolios and invest instead in real green solutions. Our schools and universities cannot teach about sustainability without striving towards being sustainable themselves. Institutions need to lead by example, and they need to walk the talk. Finally, education institutions should actively work and engage their local communities. The way of doing so changes from context to context, but examples of such action could be to proactively fight disinformation, to inform parents on environmental issues, to develop partnerships with green actors, or to promote democratic discussions on the importance of climate and biodiversity action. Education institutions play a fundamental role in our communities, a role that cannot be fulfilled by any other institution. They should use that role to be leaders of the green transition. But how do we achieve these goals? What is our role as young people? Well, our role is to put enough pressure on decision makers to make the necessary changes come into reality. This needs to be done at all levels, from a small local school at a rural area all the way to the United Nations. And our action needs to be both within and outside the system. In the places where students and youth are represented, like in student unions or academic senates, we need to use our democratic tools to ensure that these topics are put at the center of the agenda. But that should not stop us from being active on the streets, especially when we are not represented in the decision-making processes. We must organize and fight together for the change we all need and the future we all deserve. If there's something that we have learned in this past year, is that when we young people fight together, we are unstoppable. Thank you so much for your attention and have a great Mock COP26.